Hey there, YouTube. Help us out. Like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Tap that little bell so you get notified every time we go live. We're recapping Tuesday and talking players to drop up next. What's up and welcome into Fantasy Baseball today on Wednesday, July 27th. Frank Stampfl joined by Scott White and Chris Towers. Today on the show, Pablo Lopez was awesome. Let's talk about some waiver wire hitters that we just keep talking about. Yeah, maybe your minds have changed. Probably not. Players to drop and much more. But let's jump right in.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Also, I didn't mention this on yesterday's podcast. I'm sure nobody cares at all, but obviously that clip, famous Susan Waldman, she was inducted into the Radio Hall of Fame. So shout out to Susan and shout out to my Bronx Bombers getting beaten down by the New York Mets here. Game 1 of the Subway Series. Anyway, oh my goodness gracious. You know, I wanted to start with Pablo Lopez, who's my player, but I don't like when I talk for so long.
Just do it, because it felt like you've got me listed first, and it doesn't make sense to do the less impressive of the two pitchers in that game.
It's
so
true.
You should just go first.
I will. Scott, say something, anything, so that you get a word in, and then I'll go.
Hello.
Scott's here. All right, let's talk about Pablo Lopez, who tied a career high with 11 strikeouts at the Cincinnati Reds. And he was pretty jacked up in this start. 7 innings, 2 hits, 1 run, 11 strikeouts to 0 walks, 18 swinging strikes on 94 pitches. The velocity up across the board, 1.6 miles per hour on the fastball, 1.4 miles per hour on the curve, 1.5 miles per hour on the cutter as well. Kind of changed up the pitch mix in this start through his curveball, a season high 14%. And in a very limited sample this season, it's been a very good pitch for him. So I'm wondering if maybe this can be a third offering for him moving forward. I know it's been a pretty inconsistent pitch for him so far in his career. Pablo Lopez kind of needed this start because his previous 8 starts before this, a 4.60 ERA. Where do you guys land on Pablo Lopez as of now? He got off to this great start, then obviously this most recent 8-start stretch, not great, and then an awesome start here. So I think we're kind of at a crossroads. Like, do you kind of buy what we saw here on Tuesday, or do you look to capitalize and try and sell high before your trade deadline? Scott, you're up first.
Well, he hasn't gotten hurt yet, so you could make a sell high case just from that perspective. Yeah, it's been a while since he's been a bankable fantasy pitcher. You mentioned that 8-start stretch. 7 of those 8 starts were less than 6 innings, so he's about at his normal innings total right now because he has avoided getting hurt. So there may be a workload, even if he manages to stay healthy in the second half, there may be some workload considerations at play to preserve his health. I presume he's a possible trade target. I think you mentioned that, Frank. So, that's up in the air as well. Anywhere he goes will probably be a more hitter-friendly environment. So you have to take that into account too. And just the fact that prior to the start, he was at less than a strikeout per inning. So there are a lot of ways you could criticize Lopez. I still think he's a good pitcher. I mean, I just look at the fact that he throws strikes consistently. He has a very good swinging strike rate. He has at least 1+ pitch in the changeup. Like I think in the long run, it will be wise to start Lopez. But yeah, I mean, there's this question of exactly how good is he, and is now a good time to sell? I would say see what you can get. If you can get a clearer, like top 20 type pitcher. I mean, I don't know how likely a pitcher for pitcher trade is, but that's kind of how I'm seeing Pablo Lopez right now. He's on the outside of the top 20 looking in.
Yeah, I think Pablo Lopez, he's probably more of like a top 25, top 30 starting pitcher than the top 20 pitcher that we've had him ranked like for most of the season. He has that exquisite changeup, which you mentioned, Scott. I think his fastball is fine, but Chris, it's, trying to find that third offering. He mixes in the cutter at times, the curveball, and both of those pitches are kind of inconsistent for him. And, I think if he can kind of get what he got from his curveball in this start moving forward, then maybe there is higher upside for Pablo Lopez. So what do you think about him? Sell high or keep the guy?
Yeah, I mean, the curveball's not really a pitch that he's used all that often, really, since 2019. And it hasn't been a great pitch for him historically, so it kind of makes sense. Like it's been a really good pitch this season. The results have been really, really good. 53% whiff rate is outstanding. 0.71 expected WOBA is, both of those are unsustainable, but still, just indicative of how good the pitch has been for him. But yeah, I don't expect that to like unlock some new level for him. I think Pablo Lopez is what he is, which is a low to mid 3s ERA guy who has some innings concerns, and that's a very valuable player, but there's always the chance of that injury coming back. He's missed time 2 out of the last 3 seasons with shoulder issues. Last season, significant time with the shoulder issues. So yeah, it's a real concern. It's always tough knowing how to evaluate these kinds of players because we can't predict injuries. Like past injuries are the best indicator of future injuries, but try as we might, we can't actually predict when injuries are going to happen. In the long span of time, Pablo Lopez will get hurt again at some point. I wish he wouldn't. I don't wish it on him, but it's just an inevitability. That's true of all pitchers, but especially pitchers with his injury history. So, yeah, I think there's always room to sell high on him, and I think right now is probably your best opportunity because it's probably going to end up being his best start of the season. So, yeah, consider it, but it's not a must. Like I've got him 25th, so right around the same rank that you guys mentioned, and the guys behind him are like Lucas Giolito, Charlie Morton. So there's,
I'd take Charlie Morton over him at this point.
I think I would as well, but it's kind of a squishy range at starting pitcher. I think he's glob-ish to use that term.
Well, I mean, to speak to the glob, I just moved Giolito down to 40th. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways you could go with that range of pitchers.
All right, I have one hitter and I have one pitcher and a couple of hitters. Would you sell Pablo Lopez for Jacob deGrom right now if you could?
Boy, I mean,
what is Jacob deGrom's trade value?
I don't know. Like I'm looking at the rankings and we all have deGrom around like SP 20. So maybe you could pull it off. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know I don't know how much I want to.
Exactly.
You know what? If let's make it a league size issue. 10-team league. Yes, I will shoot for the stars with deGrom.
12-team points league.
12-team points leagues, which is kind of medium depth. I would lean toward trading for deGrom, going for the upside. You only have so many lineup spots in that format. If it's a deep league like a 15-teamer, 16-teamer, I'd be more likely to play it safe. To whatever degree sticking with Lopez is playing it safe. Yeah.
All right.
That's a tough one.
I have 3 borderline top 20-ish outfielders right now. Whit Merrifield, Brian Reynolds, JD Martinez. Let's say you need a hitter. Do you think that's fair value for Pablo Lopez?
I think I'd probably need a little more, especially for Merrifield at this point. But none of the, Martinez I think is the closest, but he's been kind of just okay for a while.
And
similar to last season.
You'd need more in exchange for Lopez, is what you're saying.
Yes, I'd need more to give up Lopez.
Yeah,
it's tough because right after that in my rankings, you get into like Cedric Mullins, who's been awesome over the past 2 months, and Starling Marte and Byron Buxton, and I don't think that's realistic. You could try, but I don't think you can get those players for Pablo Lopez personally.
I mean, look for the person who needs pitching help most. That's right. Like we kind of. I feel like when we have these trade conversations, it's kind of reverse engineering the trading process. Like I feel like you should start with, okay, who do I want to trade? Yeah. And then who needs this player? And then look at that roster and decide what you could get back in return.
That's exactly the way to do it, Scott. But so many people will email in or tweet at us and ask, what range of player can I get in return for this guy?
I know.
It's pretty hard.
I get it.
Just trying to give people an idea. All right.
Top 70-ish overall players.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Oh my goodness gracious, Chris, for you on the other side of that game.
Yeah, we'll look on the other side of that game and Hunter Greene, who, look, it's the Marlins, but you're happy anytime a guy with his potential puts together a good start, and he did. Not 6 strikeouts, 6 1/3 innings, 2 earned runs, 1 walk. He had, loading the page up, 18 swinging strikes, 11 of them with that slider. That remains a very, very good pitch. Velocity was up to 100.3 miles per hour. He remains arguably the hardest throwing pitcher in baseball. It's actually kind of funny. I was looking at Pablo Lopez, had one of the highest velocity starts of his season, 94.4 miles per hour. He was the softest tossing player in this Marlins Reds game, a game between 2 of the worst teams in baseball, or 2 bad teams, I guess, which is just baseball's nuts right now. Hunter Greene, he's going to continue to be aggravating, but I can't give up on him.
I didn't realize his roster rate was down to 75%, which I guess makes sense when you look at the overall numbers for Hunter Greene.
ERA over 5.
He's got a 5.59 ERA.
Yeah.
I can't defend that. He also has 119 strikeouts. So, I mean, that is very valuable. He's got a great swinging strike rate, but, the ERA, the whip, it hurts you quite a bit. And, how many wins are you going to get pitching for the Cincinnati Reds? It's, I get it. He's a fun pitcher, but I feel like this is weird to say because obviously he has a ton of upside, but his upside is kind of capped right now, just kind of pitching for the Cincinnati Reds.
I think he's generally trending in the right direction. It helps his last 3 starts. The velocity has been up as much as it has. But a big part of the problem with Greene from a rest of season perspective is that his season's likely to end before most other pitchers. Since the Reds are last place, you don't need a bunch of 100-mile-per-hour fastballs used up for a last place finish. That you don't need to put that kind of get that kind of mileage out of his arm right now. And I think by the time he gets to 130 innings or so, it'll probably be a pretty hard cap for Hunter Greene.
Scott, your microphone was kind of doing that weird thing again. I don't know if you're bouncing around or anything, but it just happens every now and then. I don't know why.
Yeah. Does it sound better now?
You do.
Sounds great.
I'm saying Hunter Greene's going to run out of innings and they're going to shut that guy down. It'll happen.
You know what's good?
Yeah, that's probably
early
fair.
in September.
He's about 10 innings shy of where he finished last season. And obviously, because he didn't pitch in 2019 and 2020 because of injury and the pandemic season, that's his career high. So I would say he probably has 40 more innings left in him. I think that's a decent number. And the way he's throwing, that could be 8 more starts. But, there's no hard and fast rule with any of these. And Hunter Greene, given his history, it wouldn't surprise me if the Reds wanted to push him to say 140 innings, 150 innings, just to have that base to build on. But it's impossible to know.
He's kind of been treated like a workhorse, though, this season in general. This is his 6th
He's throwing a lot
start.
of pitches.
6th start of over 100 innings, 100 pitches, and he has a few near 120, which is pretty surprising. So, more on Hunter Greene in a little bit.
I'm going to bring up the workload issue a lot because I just wrote about it. The 18 starters that I think are at risk of not necessarily a shutdown, but a slowdown at least, where they do the skipped turn, they do the we're pulling you after 4 effective innings kind of thing. And Hunter Greene's on that list.
All right. And, just continue to mention it, Scott. But if you haven't already, go check it out on the site. Of course, cbssports.com/fantasy/baseball. All right, Chris, Scott. Oh, my goodness gracious, for you from Tuesday.
All right. Almost 15 minutes in. We got our third. Oh, my goodness gracious. And I can't even remember who I picked. Who did I pick?
Mike Clevinger.
There you go, Mikey. Yeah, I just wrote about him too, but I wrote about him in a different context because he is not going to run out of innings. Even though it's his first full year back from Tommy John surgery, he's missed so much of it with various ailments unrelated to the elbow. He's had 3 separate IL stints in the first half. So he is free to roam here in the second half and trending the right way as far as workload goes. So he went 7 innings in this start against the Tigers. It was an effective start. It was against the Tigers, 2 earned runs. 5 strikeouts is an unimpressive number. 10 whiffs on 92 pitches, whatever. But it was a good start. And now 4 of Clevinger's last 5 starts have been 6 innings or more. And like, if there's no babying of him, then I'm not sure what there is not to like here, because I look, obviously small sample because of all the time he's missed, but I break down Clevinger, and he basically looks like Mike Clevinger. The velocity's been down a little from its peak, but that 3-year run of Clevinger being a high-end fantasy pitcher, I believe it was 2017 when it started, his velocity is still higher than it was at the start of that run. Like there had been some fluctuation with his velocity over, and we've seen him be effective in spite of that. So I think his velocity is good enough for him to be a reliable pitcher for you down the stretch. The swinging strike rate looks good. He's not walking a bunch of guys. And as I pointed out, he's giving you a legitimate starter's workload right now. The Padres just cut down to a 5-man rotation after being 6-man for most of this year. So there's a lot to like, I think, about Clevinger going forward. And because he's kind of a forgotten man with all the time he's missed, I think it presents a good buy low opportunity.
Yeah.
One thing I will point out is, he did go 7 innings in this start. Like you mentioned, 6 innings or more in 4 of his last 5. He's only thrown more than 94 pitches once in that span, and that was 98. So his pitch counts are 86, 98, 83, 94, and then 92 today, even though he went 7 innings. So, the pitch counts haven't been like super high given how deep he's pitched in the games. That's a good sign that he's been effective and efficient. And, in this start, it was interesting. He didn't have a swinging strike, I think, until his 42nd pitch of the night. And then had 10 in his final 50. So that's a pretty good sign. But yeah, I don't expect Clevinger to be I don't expect him to average 6+ innings per start moving forward necessarily. But I do think he's always been someone who's outperformed his peripherals. He's always been someone who's, been a little better than you would think, at least in terms of run prevention. So I think that'll continue. I think he is a buy low candidate. I agree with that. Or just a buy in general.
And he is in a contract year, so perhaps looking to cash in on a big second half. I kind of buy into those narratives. I think something you could pull off here, just in general, sell high, buy low, is Pablo Lopez for Mike Clevinger and another piece. Like if you're someone who needs depth on your team, I think that's something that you can look into doing right now. Let's move over to some hitters, the waiver wire hitters. And I mentioned, it's just hitters we've been talking about a lot recently because they keep playing well. So we'll start off with Hunter Renfroe. He went 1 for 4 with his 17th home run. He's now up to 73% rostered. So, more of a shallow ad, maybe a head-to-head points league, something like that. Would you guys drop a Cody Bellinger for Hunter Renfroe? Bellinger hit his 13th home run of the season on Tuesday.
I have no good reason to say no.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I think we've crossed the threshold where you have to, if you're just talking a redraft league where you have to weigh upside versus what they're doing for you right now. I mean, you're always going to weigh it to some degree. I'm not saying, you drop a slumping Kyle Schwarber for some guy off the waiver wire, but you know what I'm saying? Like Bellinger's done nothing all year. At his best, he's probably better than Renfroe, but at this point, I'm kind of done holding out.
I don't even know if he's because I don't know what Cody Bellinger at his best looks like anymore, because the best we've seen from him in his last 1,000 plate appearances was when he had a 788 OPS in 2020. I mean, we're going literally, we're about 50 plate appearances away from it being 1,000 plate appearances since his MVP season. 700 over the past 2 seasons, where he's just been not useless for fantasy because he's on an 18-18 pace or something, but very bad. Very, very bad, Cody Bellinger. With underlying numbers to back it up. I mean, he's right at his expected WOBA right now. 280 to 281. That is dreadful. I can't give you a good reason to not drop Cody Bellinger. I can't say that I would be actually able to hit the button myself, but I think that probably highlights a flaw in how I play fantasy baseball.
I think in a points league, I'd be all right doing it. In a categories league, it is a little bit tougher because the 11 steals he has on the season. But I mean, you're right.
Yeah.
It's been a long time now, and overall 647 OPS on the season. It's just, what are we doing?
Yeah, I agree.
All right, let's move over to the third baseman that we keep talking about, Jose Miranda. Another big game, 3 for 4 with a double, 2 RBI, back-to-back 3-hit games, and now has the overall batting average up to 271. He is 45% rostered. Ramon Arias does it again. He went 1 for 3, hit his 11th home run, and it was a pretty long one. It was a bomb. It was like 425 feet. It was like over there, whatever you want to call the Great Wall in left field, whatever they're calling it. But he has 11 home runs in 66 games. That is a 25 home run pace over 150 games. Again, that is Ramon Arias. He's just having a massive July. Chris, how would you rank these three if you need either a third baseman or corner infielder? Miranda, Arias, Nolan Jones, who hit his second home run of the season on Tuesday.
I think I would go Miranda, Jones, Arias. Miranda, we still don't know what the playing time is going to look like. That would be the biggest concern. But Miguel Sano was back in the lineup today. I think it was his first game back, right? And
I believe so, yes.
And Luis Arias actually sat against the lefties. So, it was Miranda in the lineup with Sano starting. So I don't know what that means moving forward. It's one game, who knows? But that's a good sign. And it'd be hard to take him out of the lineup right now. And he's, got some pedigree. So I really like what we're seeing from Miranda, and he would be the top guy for me.
Yes, it was indeed Miguel Sano's first game back. Scott, how do you rank these three? Miranda, Arias, and Nolan Jones, who, by the way, the strikeout rate has climbed as you predicted. It's not like unbearable. I think it's like 26%, but it has climbed a little bit for Nolan Jones.
Yeah, but the walk rate has been great. The quality of contact has been great. So I think as long as those stay that way, and I have faith in the walk rate, especially looking at his minor league track record, as long as those stay that way, he's a guy who can afford to strike out at a near 30% rate, I think. Questions of playing time there too. The Guardians faced so few left-handers since he got called up that I still don't think we have a clear idea how that's going to go, him being a left-handed hitter.
Did we make the Muncy comp when he got called up?
Did anybody make it? No, I don't think so.
Okay, that's...
Maybe you did, actually. Yeah. I can't remember. I don't remember everything you say, Chris. Yeah. kind of a 3 true outcomes guy, I guess. Yeah. But no, I mean, I don't buy this Arias thing very much.
His quality of contact is pretty good. Like I don't think it's nothing. Like, I think Arias is worth picking up. I would rather have Miranda, especially. I think Arias and Jones is closer, but I do think the overall skill set for Miranda is a little strong.
Yeah, I ranked them the same way, Miranda, Jones, and Arias. Like, Arias kind of reminds me of, remember when Freddie Galfis was useful for a couple years there? Like, he'd eke out 20 homers with a not terrible batting average. Maybe that's what Ramon Arias could be.
Arias's underlying numbers are better than that, I think. The 73rd percentile on average exit velocity, 90th percentile on hard hit rate. There are some things to like, given that he's a pretty good contact hitter as well. So I don't want to downplay him too much.
I picked him up in a few roto leagues where you've obviously got the middle and the corner infielder. And I think having his versatility and the skill set that he brings right now, hitting for a decent batting average and decent pop let's call it for what it is. The Orioles are playing pretty well right now. So
they are not in last place. It's July 27th, and the Orioles are not in last place. That's remarkable.
Crazy. Yeah, shout out to that.
By the way, I'm not sure if you mentioned this, Frank, but Jose Miranda he entered today batting .315 since June 1st. And so with another 3 hits, he's probably up near 330. I don't know. I haven't done the math, but that's how hot he's been. I know the overall stat line doesn't look great for Miranda still because it took him a while to get going, but and that's with average exit velocity is near 90 miles per hour during that stretch. The strikeout rate's about 20%, and he's putting the ball in the air a lot. He's maximizing his power. So that's all good signs for Miranda.
Speaking of high batting averages since June 1st, Stephen Kwan went 3 for 5 with his 7th steal And since the start of June, he is batting exactly 330, the 10th best batting average during that time, only a 9% strikeout rate, which kind of makes you think if you play in a points league, this guy might be pretty good. Well, you're right. Last 28 days, and this is before his big game on Tuesday, he is a top 10 outfielder over the past month in head-to-head points leagues. Stephen Kwan is. So, obviously a lot of it has to do with that plate discipline, leading off, getting a good amount of plate appearances for the Guardians. He's 49% rostered. I don't think that I would make this move, but someone on Twitter asked me if I would drop Taylor Ward for Stephen Kwan. And like in a shallow league, in a points league, I might do it. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I don't think I'm there yet. In spite of what I just said with the Bellinger Renfroe comparison earlier, I mean that's Bellinger, who as Chris pointed out, hasn't really been good since 2019. Taylor Ward was the best player in fantasy for 2 months and has cooled off quite a bit, but showing signs of coming around recently. And there's just no next gear for Kwan. Like when he's hitting 330.
Scott, move around a little bit because it's happening.
Yeah,
again.
like here's a good example of the limitations for Kwan is since June 1st, he's hitting 330, which is the 10th best batting average in baseball, as Frank said. He is on an 83 run, 48 RBI, 3 home run, 14 stolen base pace. So like that's when he's hitting 330.
Yeah.
He doesn't do anything. That's the problem. Like the steals are okay, but I think we made the David Fletcher comp. Last time we talked about him on Sunday's show or Monday's show, and I just kind of think that's what he is. Like the batting average, I don't want to write it off. The 330 batting average, that's going to help your fantasy team no matter what. But if he hits 290 is still a really good batting average. But if he hits 290, he's probably not worth using.
I don't think
that's the difficult thing.
It's hard to say he's a must-add in a points league because it's just so shallow. You only, starting probably, 40 outfielders if you factor in some utility bats. But, I mean, it's, top 10 over the last month. It's hard to argue with that. So, the numbers are what they are. So, if you're desperate for an outfielder in a points league, I think Stephen Kwan is definitely worthy of an ad there. What size league do we add, if any? I brought up Jeimer Candelario on, I think it was yesterday's podcast. He went 2 for 5, hit his 10th home run, his 3rd homer in 2 nights. And he's having a good July, 268 batting average, 5 homers, 12 RBI, 923 OPS, 13% barrel rate in the month of July. And that's before this home run here on Tuesday. So that number is only going to go up. He's 21% rostered. Is this like a 12-team roto thing, Scott? Or is it, does it have to be deeper than that? What do you think for Candelario?
I mean, I think it's desperation. I understand why you keep bringing him up because we have to talk about somebody who's available, right? And I think it's just, most of the players who are available at this stage of the season just aren't very good. However, I mean, maybe you lose your third baseman and you have to sort through those options. Candelario appears to be a hot hand play, and he's been useful for stretches before. Had a good second half last year, though it mostly manifested as doubles, I would point out, which aren't useful and at least not directly useful in 5x5 leagues. So, that's as much as I think you're going to get from Candelario. I don't think there's a breakout happening here or anything.
I made the argument to Nando DeFino once. We were talking about like roto versus head-to-head points, and he was trying to tell me why roto was the best. I'm like, but doubles don't count for more. And then, of course, his response was, well, you're closer to scoring a run. So,
no, yeah. I mean, there is an indirect impact, though.
I mean, it's kind of like on base percentage. Like, it's not really impacting a player's fantasy value, and it probably should, but
right.
Well, in points leagues, it does. It depends what format you're playing.
That's what I mean. Right.
Yeah. But in roto, I mean, unless you score a run, a walk doesn't really help. I guess if you factor,
it improves your chances of driving in a run too. If there's a guy on base, it's better than a single.
Fair. Some hitters in deeper leagues that kind of popped up here, recently in general. Luis Rengifo. I feel like we spoke about him recently, Chris. We just kind of like laughed it off. He's He's been pretty good over the past month. I'll pull up his July numbers. I meant to do that, but I didn't write it in here. He went 2 for 5 with 2 RBI. He is 6% rostered. Chad Pinder hit a grand slam in the month of July. He's hitting 308 with 4 homers, 17 RBI. And Victor Robles had 2 hits and his 12th steal of the season. He has led off the past 2 nights for the Nationals. And in July, he's hitting 280, 2 homers, 5 steals. So, I mean, that could be 15-team league worthy. Chris, what do you think about these 3 names in deeper leagues? Renfroe, Pinder, Victor Robles.
Robles is the most interesting of them, which tells you how uninteresting this group is, because Robles is, pretty hopeless at this point. It's good to see him batting at the top of the lineup, and if he's going to have value the rest of the season in a Roto League, it'll just be from eking out a decent batting average and stealing some bases. I don't really think there's room for him to do much else. You look at the underlying numbers, still looks like one of the weakest hitters in baseball. And so you're just hoping that the Nationals lineup is so bad that he hits leadoff regularly, hits 270 is probably the most optimistic I would be, and maybe steals 10 bags for the rest of the season. That would be a success story for Victor Robles at this point.
And it looks like they're getting ready to unload basically everybody on their team. So I think the playing time and potentially that opportunity to lead off every night will be there for Victor Robles. Scott, anything on these 3 in deeper leagues? Renfroe, Pinder, Robles.
Not a lot to get excited about now. Sorry.
Fair enough.
Not impressing me, Frank.
Sorry, bud. Before we hit the break, if you would be so kind, leave us a 5-star rating on Apple. Feel free to drop a question or a team name Tuesday in the review. If you listen to us on Spotify, you can leave a 5-star rating there as well. And as I've mentioned, and I'm going to continue to mention, this is the final week that you can nominate Fantasy Baseball Today for the Best Sports Podcast category in the People's Choice Podcast Awards. Again, the link to help us out is podcastawards.com/app/signup, and then toggle down the sports category. We have a QR code if you're watching us on YouTube. It's in the top right next to Scotty's head. And pull out your phone. You scan that. That'll bring you right to the link as well. The link can also be found in the podcast and YouTube description. We're going to take a break, and we'll be back right after this. The news and notes. Fernando Tatis took batting practice with his teammates on Tuesday, the first time he's done so since injuring his wrist, and he could face live pitching a couple of times next week before going on a rehab assignment, which kind of makes me feel like mid-August is a realistic timetable, assuming that we get no setbacks here with Fernando Tatis. Julio Rodriguez did indeed make his return to the Mariners lineup on Tuesday, and I think he's fine because he hit his 17th home run of the season. It looks like Julio Rodriguez. Manny Machado tweaked his ankle a little bit in extra innings, so something to watch there. Hopefully he's all right. Chris Bryant, who missed Monday's game due to a foot injury, returned Tuesday as a designated hitter, and it turns out that he's dealing with plantar fasciitis. So between that,
it's no fun. Just get a cold beer bottle and roll it under your foot. That always helps me.
Yeah, you're speaking from experience, Chris?
Yeah, man, it's a real issue. That's why I had to stop skateboarding.
I know Chris Bryant comes here for medical advice, so I'm glad you're here.
I'm not saying it's medical advice. It's just, he's starting to get into his 30s. I'm just, trying to help a fellow geriatric millennial out.
Chris, how far did you get in your skateboarding career? I'm sure everybody's dying to know.
I ollied a 5-step once.
What does that mean?
Like, 5 sets of 5 stairs. I jumped down it.
That's like decently impressive, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't do it now. My wife won't let me. I've talked about it when that Tony Hawk remake came out last year. I talked about buying a skateboard, and my wife rightly talked me out of it.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I could land a kickflip right now.
Ooh. You know what I've always...
It's just a question of whether I would hurt myself before I land it.
I was never able to do a kickflip. I had some skateboarding days. I was not good. Definitely did not ollie down like 5 steps or anything. But
well, I wonder, like, what gives... Speaking as somebody who's not very coordinated or daring, I guess. Like, what motivates you to try that in the first place? Like, what makes you think I could
The
do
release
that?
of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater
That's the entire reason.
for
Yeah,
me
but, like,
and millions of other people.
I get that would make you want to be able to do it, but what makes you think this is not like
I was 11.
Okay. Okay.
When I was younger, I used to use it as a form of transportation. I mean, that was one of the legitimate reasons. And then, I mean, being able to land any kind of trick, it's a pretty cool feeling. But
Yeah, it's pretty cool, man.
I wouldn't.
Well,
The
that's
first
great,
time you land a
but, like-
tray flip, ooh, boy.
But I imagine that the first time you try it, it doesn't go successfully.
Oh,
And
it's
very
just
painful.
endless hours of frustration and pain. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
No pain, no gain.
And
Come on,
so
Scotty.
you just,
I don't remember how
so
we
you
got
just
here.
Don't mind it. Okay, that's fine.
Anyway, Giancarlo Stanton was placed on the IL with left Achilles tendonitis, which kind of came out of nowhere, retroactive to Sunday. I don't know. Maybe this affects their trade deadline plans, pushes them towards an outfielder. We'll see. Bobby Witt Jr. has missed 2 straight due to right hamstring tightness. Mitch Haniger moved his rehab assignment to AAA on Tuesday and should be back soon with the Mariners. Speaking of which, George Kirby was recalled and Matt Brash was optioned back to AAA. More on Kirby in just a bit. Jesus Luzardo will make his 3rd minor league rehab start Wednesday at AAA. He's 72% rostered, could be out there in some shallower leagues. Mackenzie Gore was placed on the IL with left elbow soreness. Not yet clear what the exact injury is, so once we find out, we will let you know. Garrett Cooper was placed in the IL with a right wrist contusion. Lewin Diaz was recalled by the Marlins, and I believe starting at first base here on Tuesday. Max Kepler has been diagnosed with a mildly displaced fracture of his right pinky toe. There is a chance that he'll be able to avoid the IL. Francisco Mejia was placed in the IL with a right shoulder impingement, which should help the playing time of Christian Betancourt. Apparently, the Tigers are shopping everybody, including Tarek Skubal, which actually comes as a bit of a surprise. Obviously, he's like young and kind of good, kind of exciting. So I don't know if anything will come.
Has a lot of control left, which is normally what front offices value the most. So that's that is. I imagine they need to be blown away to move Skubal, but that's interesting.
Yeah, probably won't happen. But speaking of trade rumors, apparently the Mets and Cubs have talked about a deal, including both Wilson Contreras and reliever David Robertson. Also, Josh Bell is a priority for the Houston Astros, which
That'd be pretty good.
I think would be a nice little boon to his value. This one was really unfortunate. The Diamondbacks' first-round pick, 2nd overall pick in the MLB draft, Drew Jones, suffered a shoulder injury during his first batting practice with the team on Monday, and sounds like he will not play any pro ball this season. And in fact, I saw a report that he might not even be ready for spring training next year.
They've had really bad luck with their top prospects, right, Scott? Like, didn't Corbin Carroll miss a significant amount of time with a shoulder injury? And yeah,
I think he missed
rotten luck
most of last year, Corbin Carroll. And, to his credit, he's returned this year and looked phenomenal. So
yeah, it certainly hasn't hindered his development, which you would expect it to. I mean, the fact that he just crushes every level despite having played so few games in the minors. Like, Corbin Carroll shaping up to be my number 1 overall prospect next year. He was my number 1 midseason prospect.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. He is just having a monster season in the minors. Speaking of Drew Jones and just the MLB draft, if you haven't, go back on demand and listen to the podcast that Chris did with our buddy the Welsh last week. It was, recap of the first round and first year player draft rankings. Obviously, the value of Drew Jones has changed quite a bit, but I thought you guys did a really good job. So anyone who plays in Dynasty Leagues, go check that out. More first-round pick news. Pitcher Kumar Rocker has officially signed with the Texas Rangers 1 year after he was not offered a contract by the Mets, the team who drafted him last year. Waiver wire pitchers, not really the best night for this on Tuesday, but George Kirby could be out there in some shallower leagues, and he returned to the mound for the Mariners, and he was solid. 5 shutout innings, 2 hits, 1 walk, 4 strikeouts, only threw 51 pitches in this start, had 6 swinging strikes, changed up the pitch mix a little bit. He did not throw his changeup, which he uses about 10% usually, and he threw a new sinker, 14%, which we've also seen from his teammate Robbie Ray, just incorporating a new sinker. So I thought that was kind of interesting for George Kirby. Scott, how would you rank these 4? Shallow leagues, waiver wire pitchers, Kirby, Luzardo, Andrew Heaney, Hunter Greene. They're all between 70 and 75% rostered.
I would rank them this way. All right, say the names again. Sorry. I thought I could find them in the notes. Oh,
Kirby,
there.
Luzardo, Heaney, and Greene.
Yeah, I would rank them Heaney, I think. Heaney, Luzardo, Kirby, Greene, I would say. They're all like I feel like Heaney, Luzardo, and Kirby, the first of those three, are pretty close to must roster. I know they're available in some leagues, so they aren't literally must roster, but they like if they're out there in your league, you should try to make a play for them. However, I will point out in Kirby's case, like he might be the clearest candidate for a shutdown of any pitcher. His 91 innings, well, prior to the start, it was 91. I guess now it's 96. The most he's ever thrown as a professional is 67 2/3. So, he's already almost 30 over his previous career high. So I got to think like 120 might be as hard as they push him. I know they're fighting for a playoff spot and he's contributing to that. I presume they're going to acquire another arm at the deadline. So, that really shouldn't impact your thinking as to whether or not to pick up Kirby. Because if he runs out of innings, who cares? You can enjoy him in the meantime. But I do think he'll run out of innings at some point.
It's got a random prospect question, but do you think we will see Emerson Hancock at any point this season, a pitching prospect for the Mariners?
I haven't really.
He's been very good.
Doing
2.15 ERA, 107 WHIP, 11 starts at AA, but he is 23 years old.
Yeah, and he's thrown only 46 innings. I know he missed some time with injury earlier this year. I mean, it's possible. Sure. I mean, I don't think like if the Mariners find themselves with a hole in their rotation and they're still very much in the playoff mix, like I don't think they're gonna stop themselves from calling up Hancock to help if they think he can help. So yeah, it's possible. I'm not necessarily counting on it. And I don't know how high the upside is anyway, because like he hasn't been a strikeout per inning guy in the minors. He's more of like a high floor prospect rather than a high ceiling prospect. But yeah, it's a name to keep in mind, Emerson Hancock.
All right. Chris, Keegan Thompson, are you looking to add him anywhere? He actually had the longest outing of his career here on Tuesday up against the Pirates. He went 7 innings, 2 unearned runs. He had 7 strikeouts to 0 walks, 14 swinging strikes on 97 pitches. And he leaned more on his four-seam fastball in this start. And he doesn't throw it very hard, but it's a very high spin rate fastball, 91st percentile in terms of spin rate. And Keegan Thompson has a 3.16 ERA on the season, 55% rostered, and he's SPARP eligible. Chris, what do you think about Keegan Thompson?
I've had a hard time getting excited about him. He's one of those guys who just he's kind of average at everything. Like all the skills that we look for at starting pitcher, he's like average or maybe a little bit below. And so I like 55% rostered. That sounds right. I can't imagine there are too many leagues where I would think Keegan Thompson needs to be added. Like he's definitely behind Kirby, Luzardo, Heaney, and Greene for me. Although the SPARP eligibility, that helps.
In deeper leagues, Jose Suarez, just wanted to point out, he had a strong start at the Royals, 5 1/3 shutout, 3 hits, 1 walk, 3 strikeouts, 11 swinging strikes on 78 pitches. That's a pretty good ratio. Completely changed up his pitch mix in this start. Threw his slider 44%. That was 10% entering this start. And he threw his sinker 24%. That was 8%. So just completely changed everything here. Scott, the overall numbers are not great, though the swinging strike rate is kind of intriguing. What do you think about Jose Suarez in deeper leagues?
Yeah, I think you basically said it. The swinging strike rate is kind of intriguing, but that's about it. And that's not enough.
I sat him in the 24-team Dynasty League this week.
All right, and
that kind of tells you.
That's a pretty deep league. So I want to pay attention to this pitch mix because it's just so drastic a change. So again, this is just for like the deepest of leagues. The Drop-O-Meter. These are among the most dropped players on CBS right now. And I mentioned his name earlier, Taylor Ward. Since May 21st. Why the date May 21st? Mike Kurland, who we have had on this podcast before, pointed this out on Twitter that was the day after Taylor Ward left with neck/shoulder issues and hasn't really been the same since. So in 43 games, 231 batting average, 4 homers, 1 steal. He's still 84% rostered. Scott, we'll start with you. The drop-o-meter on Taylor Ward.
So who was it I said I preferred him to earlier in the show?
Stephen
Kwan.
Yeah. Okay. Because I don't think, and I'm glad it was somebody as low end as that, because I don't think Ward is beyond dropping, particularly in like a 3 outfielder league. Obviously, 5 outfielder leagues. There's just so few outfielders to turn to that you kind of want to hold on to anybody with impact potential. But the track record for Ward isn't great, and the second half of his season so far he's been utterly useless. So. I could understand moving on to like a Hunter Renfroe or something like that if you play in a 3 outfielder league.
All right, let's move over to Patrick Sandoval. Yes, Chris, you will get Patrick Sandoval. He's got a 3.64 ERA. His whip is 1.51. One of those things is not like the other. And in the month of July, he's been brutal. 7.11 ERA, still over a strikeout per inning. The swinging strike rate is solid, but the walks, the hits, big issues for Patrick Sandoval. And as we mentioned with other Angel starters, he's virtually never going to give you 2 starts in a single week. Chris, I've got some questions recently about Patrick Sandoval. Where is he on the drop-o-meter for you?
I'm not going to be able to bring myself to drop him, but it's one of those situations where I couldn't necessarily give a good articulation as to why someone else shouldn't. It's interesting, the thing that he's changed in the month of July. He's gone away from the 4-seam fastball. He has almost not thrown it at all after it being his most used pitch. I don't want to say his primary pitch, but his most used pitch. And the sinker has actually not been a bad pitch for him in the month. 291 expected WOBA, 15% whiff rate, whatever, but it's better than the 4-seam fastball. The concern I have is just that what if the shape of the sinker relative to the 4-seam fastball makes his other pitches less effective? His slider's been getting hit really hard so far this month. So that would be the concern for me, but I still think there's just so much talent here that I can't go away from him. But yeah, it's been a frustrating and disappointing season for Patrick Sandoval, to say the least.
Would you drop Patrick Sandoval for any of the names that have emerged recently? Aaron Ashby, Reed Detmers, Nick Lodolo.
I think I would drop Sandoval for Ashby. I think the ceiling's higher for Ashby, and if there are immediate concerns for both, I'll take the ceiling guy. Not that Sandoval doesn't have a good
Sandoval's
ceiling.
ceiling is still the swinging strike rate is so high. He just needs to figure out
Ashby's,
how to not die.
Ashby's is higher, right?
I think it is. They're very similar pitchers, actually. Both lefties. They get lots of strikeouts, but they struggle with control, both of them.
Yeah. I would, I don't think either of us have actually given a number for the drop-o-meter yet. I'll go 5 on Sandoval. I'll go 6 on Taylor Ward.
All right.
Yeah, I'll go 3 on Sandoval, 5 on Taylor Ward. The injury is sort of robbing us of the ability to have known whether there was anything sustainable about what he was doing in the beginning of the season. I tend to think it was a fluke, but now I can't say for sure.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, look, he was performing like the best hitter in the game.
Right. Yeah. When I say fluke, obviously what he was doing was unsustainable, but even being a well above average hitter.
Whenever he's been healthy, he's played pretty well, Taylor Ward. So I think he could have maintained being a top 30 outfielder. It's just, again, it's kind of hard to judge now because how healthy is he actually? Nelson Cruz is batting just .231 on the season. He only has 8 home runs. The ground ball rate is way up. The expected numbers have dropped over the course of the season. He has not hit a home run since June 25th, and he's down to 69% rostered. Scott, 1 to 10, Nelson Cruz, drop-o-meter.
Let's say I'll go 1 higher than Ward. I think. Yeah, I'll go 7. I mean, mostly that's because outfield is a scarce position. and DH is, by definition, the least scarce position because you put any hitter there. And so, like, it's hard to squeeze in Nelson Cruz. And so that I think that makes him pretty replaceable. It wouldn't surprise me if he went on to have a more typical Nelson Cruz second half. But, we're at a point now where we can't necessarily count on that.
Chris, you get a double dose of starting pitchers. Jordan Montgomery did not have it here against the New York Mets. 2 1/3 innings, 5 hits, 5 runs, 4 of those were earned. And over his last 7 starts, Jordan Montgomery has a 4.97 ERA. Strikeouts, swinging strike rate still looks pretty good. He's still 91% rostered. And then Nick Pivetta had a solid start on Monday, but in 4 July starts, he has a 9.95 ERA. All the regression hitting at once here for Nick Pivetta. Chris, where do you rank those two, Montgomery, Pivetta, on the drop-o-meter?
I'd go like a 6. I'm not really married to any of them. I would drop any of them for any of that. Luzardo, Heaney, who were the other? Hunter Greene,
Kirby,
George Kirby. I would drop either of them for any of those 4 guys.
I think Pavetta's totally replaceable. Never really bought into what he was doing. I think Jordan Montgomery's a good, solid pitcher. I'd probably take those guys over him too, Chris. I don't know about Hunter Greene. I might rank Montgomery over Greene, especially given the team context. But if we're doing Montgomery versus like a Jose Urquidy, I'd rather have Montgomery. I think he's going to be steadier. I think the strikeout potential is definitely higher. He actually had his swinging strike rate is nothing short.
It's always been pretty high. He's one of those guys that I feel like he doesn't he's got good swinging strike rates, but he doesn't have a great put away pitch, or if he doesn't finish guys off well. It's always been the case that he's got multiple good looking pitches, but the overall strikeout rate tends to be a little underwhelming, I think.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Chris. I was watching the game on Tuesday here, and it was foul ball after foul ball and 2 strike counts, just could not finish batters off. And he's got a really good changeup. He's got a really good breaking pitch, but his fastball, his sinker they're so mediocre and they get hit pretty hard. So it just kind of limits the upside of Jordan Montgomery. I think he's a high floor player, which is fine. It's just, he's never his swinging strike rate is always going to leave you wanting more and thinking that something will come, but it never really happens for Jordan Montgomery.
No, I get that. But having said that, he's at 7.4 K per 9 this year. The previous 2 years, he was more than a strikeout per inning. Yeah. So I do think he could be better than he's been as a strikeout pitcher. I have more hope for him doing that than somebody like Urquidy.
All right, let's get into the leftovers here from Tuesday. What do we make of Michael Kopech's season? It's been a very weird one. And by weird, I kind of mean bad. Michael Kopech at Coors Field, solid start here, 5 1/3 shutout, 6 hits, 3 walks, 4 strikeouts. He had 12 swinging strikes on 91 pitches. The overall ERA is great, 3.16, but you look under the hood, he's got an xFIP approaching 5, less than a strikeout per inning, nearly 5 walks per 9. His swinging strike rate is below 10%. Obviously, the fastball velocity has taken a nosedive compared to last year when he was pitching out of the bullpen. Scott, what do you make of Michael Kopech's season? It's been a weird one.
It has been weird, and I'd be pretty discouraged about Kopech in a dynasty league if I've had him, if I've stashed him away since his days as a top prospect. Finally get a chance to see him as a full-time starter, and this is how it's gone. The stuff has played down. The walks have been, the walk to strikeout rate is terrible. That's why his xFIP is so high. So I'm pretty concerned about his future at this point. And I wonder if the White Sox won't come to the conclusion that he's probably better as a bullpen piece. I think it's premature to say that, and from where I sit, but I could just see it playing out that way because he looked great in that role last year, right? The proof is in the pudding. I'm pretty worried about him.
So 177 pitchers qualify for the minimum on the slider leaderboard on StatCast Pitch Arsenal stats. So 177 pitchers have thrown at least X number of sliders. I don't know what it is, but that's a large number. Would you like to know where he ranks in slider whiff rate among that 177?
I will say 170.
174.
Wow.
Pretty close.
3 pitchers this season have a worse swing or whiff rate with their slider than Michael Kopech this season. The slider whiff rate last year was 36%. This year it's 18%. It's half of what it was. That's really bad, and he doesn't really have a changeup to speak of. He's got a lot of development that he needs to do to be able to make it as a starter. But like Scott said, it's an incredibly, incredibly discouraging season for him so far.
A few other pitching leftovers. 2 of our favorites. Shane O'Mac.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money.
Shane McClanahan makes it 13 straight quality starts. This one at the Orioles. He only needed 81 pitches to go 7 innings. He gave up 2 hits, 2 runs, 7 strikeouts. He had 22 swinging strikes. 14 of those came on the changeup. And I thought this was pretty interesting too. He has allowed 4 hits or less in 8 straight starts. Guy is just, he's unhittable. He's ridiculous. It's crazy. His ERA actually rose in this start to 1.76 for what it's worth. Spencer Strider was also great. He bounced back with a quality start at the Phillies. 6 innings, 3 hits, 1 run, 6 strikeouts. Leaned all the way into the fastball in this one, threw it 78% of the time. Scott, anything you'd like to add on Shane O'Mac and the quad father, Spencer Strider?
So I referred to those 18 pitchers who might have workload concerns here in the second half. Both of these 2 are on it. I think Strider might be okay because of that time he spent in the bullpen early on. He's still about 20 innings short of what he was last year. And, you know, I'm thinking every pitcher has roughly 65 innings if they stick to their usual schedule, roughly 65 innings left. So, you know, that would put him 45 over last year's mark, which is, I think, a fine increase. You know, kind of depends what role the Braves plan to use him in the playoffs. Maybe they move him to the bullpen late, but, you know, I'm not so worried about it with Strider. I'm more worried about it with McClanahan because he's basically right at his career high already. And, you know, I found a quote from Kevin Cash saying, yeah, we're at the point where we're going to have to start to limit his innings somehow. That's not a direct quote, but that's more or less what he said. And then, of course, right away, McClanahan throws another 7-inning start. So, like, the Rays are a very cautious franchise by nature. They protect their assets as much as any club because, you know,
that's all they've got.
That's, yeah, I mean, they can't afford to make mistakes as much as other clubs can. So, you know, I feel like they're going to have to skip turns with him, have him go 4 innings every now and then in the second half, especially since they're probably going to be in the playoffs and want to lean on him then. I just don't see any way around it. Like, he's too important to their future. So he is somebody worth shopping right now. Now, what would be an appropriate return for McClanahan, who's been the best pitcher in fantasy so far? Like, you have to get another ace caliber pitcher and then some, I think, to make it worth doing. But you want to try to do it now before it becomes apparent to everybody that the Rays are having to pull back.
Yeah, like, this might be the perfect start because he threw 7 innings. So if you're just looking at it, well, okay, there's nothing there. But only 81 pitches. You know, he could have challenged for a complete game on in a different circumstance. But, you know, that's kind of, I think, indicative.
It hurts my heart to say this, but I have thought about shopping him in the leagues where I have him, especially like 15-team roto leagues. You know, you have holes in other places. You could turn McClanahan into like 2 viable pieces in deeper leagues. So it's something I'm probably going to try to do.
Well,
it hurts.
It should be more than viable. Like, if you're doing it right, like, it should be 2.
Well, I mean, it should be 2 great pieces.
Yeah, exactly.
Hitting leftovers from Tuesday. Seiya Suzuki went 2 for 4 with his 8th home run. Monster shot, 436 feet. 18 games since returning from the IL. He is hitting .328, 4 homers, 2 steals, a .903 OPS, 17% strikeout rate, which is very encouraging because what we saw from Seiya Suzuki right before he got hurt was he looked lost and he was striking out a crazy amount. But he has really, really returned, and he's looked very strong recently. Michael Harris went 2 for 4 with his 9th home run, and he picked up his 11th steal on Monday night. So he's also batting .292. His 150 game pace, 25 homers, 31 steals. Michael Harris has just been amazing. I grouped these two together because I recently moved Harris and Suzuki back inside my top 35 outfielders. Does that sound right, Scott?
I think definitely for Harris. Suzuki's
been awesome, man.
I know he has been recently, and the strikeout rate has been the strikeout rate has fluctuated so much this year that I think his success hinges on that, and I just don't really have a great feel for how much contact Seiya Suzuki's going to make. But Harris, I think, definitely belongs in
It's weird
that high-end outfielder group.
With Suzuki, he's not swinging and missing very often at all. His whiff rate's in the 60th percentile. His chase rate's in the 93rd percentile. So I think there are reasons to believe that his 26% overall strikeout rate might be inflated a little bit. He's very patient. I don't know if it's, patient or selective or passive. Those are all kind of different versions of the same thing. But I think it's mostly good from what we've seen from him.
O'Neal Cruz went 1 for 3 with his 6th home run, 111 miles per hour off the bat, and he now has a modest 6-game hitting streak. Progress. Aaron Judge had a sock and a shoe, 39th home run, 10th steal of the season. Big night for the Blue Jays sluggers. Vlad Jr. hit his 21st home run. George Springer went 3 for 4 with a grand slam, which was his 18th home run. And I also wanted to include Alejandro Kirk in here, but I didn't write it down. So I'll pull it up and I'll let you know what he did. Cedric Mullins went 1 for 3 with a sock and a shoe of his own, his 8th home run, his 21st steal. He now has the batting average up to 263 overall. Starling Marte went 2 for 4 with his 10th home run, and he has really come on recently. Last 15 games, he's batting .390 with 3 home runs and 3 steals. That is Starling Marte. Alejandro Kirk went 1 for 5 with his 12th home run of the season. Byron Buxton hit another one as well, his 24th home run of the season. The call to the bullpen for the Cubs. Rowan Wick pitched in the 8th inning. Michael Givens pitched the 9th for his 2nd save. And we last saw David Robertson on Sunday. Do you guys think maybe they're just kind of holding out until they trade Robertson? Maybe they don't want him to get hurt, so they're not pitching him. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, to a degree, they can't go a week without pitch. We're still 5 days away from the trade deadline. It's later than usual this year. It's August 2nd at 6 p.m. Eastern time. Mm-hmm. So we're several days away from the trade deadline still. What was that? 7 days?
7 days. Yeah.
7 days.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah. Unless they're planning to trade him tomorrow, they will have to use him some. But I had the same thought too. They must not be using him because they just don't want to risk injury right now.
Right. For the Marlins, Tanner Scott struck out 1 for his 13th save. Still kind of holding out hope that Anthony Bass will get a chance. He pitched.
I'm not. I have a lot of Scott. Thank you.
Nah, definitely doesn't have to do with the name or anything, right?
No.
But Orioles. Jorge Lopez gave up a hit, but picked up his 19th save for the Braves. Kenley Jansen recorded the final 2 outs for his 23rd save. For the Mets, Edwin Diaz recorded the final 4 outs, all via strikeout. I believe
he already has as many strikeouts as he did all of last season.
It's crazy. His 22nd save of the season. I don't know if you guys saw the game. Aaron Boone, which I have no idea why he did this. He pinch hit Joey Gallo in the 8th inning of this game. It was against Adam Ottavino at the time. And Buck Showalter's like, no, you're going to face Edwin Diaz, and he's going to strike you out immediately. And that's exactly what happened. So poor Joey Gallo, I guess. For the Padres, Taylor Rogers entered with a 1-run lead, and he gave up 1 run on 2 hits and a walk. His last 21 outings, he has a 7.61 ERA. Chris, do you think there's a chance anyone else could step up here for the Padres, or maybe they make a move? Luis Garcia pitched in the 8th inning of this game, and he's been solid this season. What do you think about the Padres?
Yeah, I could definitely see them making a move. They're always aggressive in trades, so it wouldn't surprise me if they did that. But we haven't seen them moving away from Rodgers so much yet. So I'm not expecting it. But I don't know. If you wanted to speculate on Luis Garcia, go ahead.
For the White Sox, Liam Hendricks gave up a solo homer, but converted his 19th save. For the Mariners, they had a 2-run lead. Paul Sewald pitched in the 8th inning. He gave up 2 runs on 1 hit, 2 walks. That's now 2 games in a row where Sewald was pitching in the 8th inning. He's basically their high leverage guy. They don't have a closer there. And then for the Rangers on the other side, Brett Martin entered with a 1-run lead. He gave up 2 runs on 2 hits and 2 walks, and he has looked pretty bad recently. So maybe the Rangers are close to going to someone else. Maybe they make a move. I don't know what they're going to do, but it's not really working with Brett Martin right now. To stream or not to stream for Wednesday, we've got Brad Keller versus the Angels, Cole Irvin versus the Astros, Marco Gonzalez versus the Rangers, Braxton Garrett at the Reds, Domingo Germán at the Mets, and Tyler Wells versus the Rays.
Yep. I'd try out Garrett at Cincinnati, see if he can do it against somebody other than the Pirates. It's basically what I said yesterday. I'm saying it again.
All right. Consistency. We like that.
Yeah.
On Thursday, Graham Ashcraft versus the Marlins. This will really test it. Can you pitch anybody against the Marlins? Jordan Lyles versus the Rays. Brady Singer at the Yankees.
Ashcraft's not the worst pitcher we mentioned in this segment.
I mean, he's been pretty bad recently.
He's not the worst pitcher we mentioned in this segment.
That's fair.
Typically.
Cutter Crawford versus the Guardians and Justin Steele at the Giants.
Graham Ashcraft.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh. I think
I'm gonna do it until the Marlins make it look bad.
I've got a bad feeling about Graham Ashcraft, man. No, I don't know.
I don't feel good about it, but
we also
Marlins
don't
have
feel
made
good.
everybody look good.
We also don't feel good about the Marlins. We're gonna wrap there. For Scott and Chris, I am Frank. Thank you all for listening and watching Fantasy Baseball today. We'll be back again tomorrow. Bye bye.